Hello everyone. I know you guys can't see me yet. I wonder what they can see on Facebook. I've never used my laptop for this. How are we doing? Pick out my hair so I look like half a human. Right, I'm watching Facebook Live too. Let's see what happens. Where's Maria? Oh, that's good. Yes, I can see you all too. So 4 minutes, we can chat amongst ourselves, just making sure from a technical perspective, everything's cool. I've never used my laptop for this before, so this is the first time for me to do it like this. Let me see. Let's put it on full screen. That's cute. No, if I put it on full screen, then I won't be able to see if anyone chats in the chat room. Anywho, how are we doing today, this evening, Pana Sunday? We finally made it to the first Black Child Agenda event of 2022, which is quite cute. We will be doing Q&As. So we've got myself, Cheryl Phoenix. Why are you distracting me? We've got myself, Cheryl Phoenix, and Maria Rooney. Once she logs on, let me message her. And also Jennifer Obaseki from Obaseki Solicitors, as you saw in the lineup. And today we're going to be covering, obviously, the issue around education and also social services and any other areas that, you know, because a lot of these things feed into each other. Good evening, Lisa. A lot of these things feed into each other. So we just need to make sure that we try and cover as much as possible. Because there's a lot to say. And a lot of people I know during the lockdown were facing challenges with their children. A lot of people just after the lockdown, exclusion rates, I'm doing exclusion hearings almost every day. That's another issue. And I'm not reading any messages, I just need to get one person. So there's a lot going on. So we're going to try and cover as much as we can and literally go from there. So Jennifer, would you like to introduce yourself so people know who you are? You have to unmute yourself though. What's the unmute? Hey Lisa, who's that? Kiana? I don't know, I should have. All right, look, forget that for now. All right, well, let's start with the basics. Education, what's going on in the education system and the changes in the law and also with regards to exclusions. Now, I say this all the time. It's something I'm constantly talking about with regards to your child in the education system, exclusions, etc. And one of the key things is, if you need to challenge whatever's going on in your child's school, you need to have a basic basis of where to challenge from. And that's why I always say, get a copy of your child's school file. You're going to need it. It's going to be your Bible for anything you have to say, anything you want to do. Hey, Jennifer, I'll wait for your audio to connect and then you can introduce yourself. Anything you want to say, anything you need to do, anything like that, you need to have that file, because everything from the day your child has started school to whenever, to the present day, is going to be, it should be in that file. And if you feel that how your child is being treated or not treated correctly or not correctly, then you need that to be able to know what you do next. If you've just entered, could you please mute your microphones? I'm sure I set it so that it does that. Let me just do that now, because it's going to be very annoying for everybody else that's listening to hear people's information in the background, people talking or shuffling papers or eating crisps in the background. So yes, please mute your microphones just for us, unless you're actually speaking, which will come a bit later on. Then until such time, keep your microphones muted, because it just distracts everybody. Right, anyway, so you're going to need the file. The file is your Bible. You need that to be able to do anything with regards to challenging the school, discussing what they claim that they're doing. Because the one thing I do see, don't get it twisted, is that when a lot of you come to us with regards to needing support and help, you say that the school is supposed to do this, the school is supposed to do that, they say they've done this. And then the thing is, unless you can evidence that they've actually done it, or they haven't done it according to, they've got an educational healthcare plan or whatever it may be, if it's not in the file, then it doesn't exist, and it probably hasn't happened. So that's where you start challenging. That's where you start actually talking about things. That's where you can read and cross-reference with what the law says. And hey, why do they have to make such noise in my house? So you can cross-reference with what the law says and what the school is supposed to be doing. But aside from that, then it's just guesswork. You don't know. Hi, Jennifer, I see you now. Can you introduce yourself so people know who you are and where you are, what you do?
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name's Jennifer Obaseki. I'm a solicitor. This is my 20th year in practice. So I've been doing this a long time. But it's my firm. My firm has been going for 17 years and it's based in Hackney. We have a specialism in family law, property and immigration. When it comes down to family law, we do both private contact as well as public law children's matters, and a lot of human rights and litigation against public bodies and organizations as well. So really good to be here and looking forward to hearing some of your questions later. Thank you.
It's very important. That's why we've given enough time for that. And just that if there's any, and I'm just watching the waiting room, I'm going to make you also a host, Jennifer, and Maria when she gets in as well. So then I can take the pressure off myself, because it's like the room's just filling up. So yeah, as I was saying, parents, one of the key things that you need to do is make sure that you have a copy of that file. The file has everything that you need to know in there. Before I act on anyone's behalf, one of the things I need to do is read what is in the school file. So I know what's happened, what's supposed to happen, how it's supposed to happen, who said what, when it was said, by whom it was said, and you know what the action points were. If a school is saying, for example, oh, they've given your child counseling, or they've given your child mentoring, please evidence that. I want to see what that looks like. I need to see what that actually looks like, because a lot of the time they've just taken some old dragon who's about to retire, who has no skills within counseling, is not a qualified counseling, and your child may have SEMH, and there's no outcomes, there's no reports, there's nothing. There's a problem right now where I keep seeing these exclusions. A lot of the exclusions are unlawful. A lot of them where it's like, oh, your child is being sent home, or we're going to send your child to improve, or we're going to do this. Yes, they can direct your child to approve, but unless you can see what's going on in that file as well, to see what's happened prior, what they did, what the outcomes were, and what they are looking to do next because they have failed to manage your child's behavior, then they will more likely divert your child to approve, because it's the easier way of them. Let me just turn down my phone. It's an easier way of them being able to get, if your child needs a diagnosis or they need to be assessed for anything, it's a cheaper alternative to send them to a pupil referral unit to get that done, rather than the school spending their own resources to actually have that done. So you find a lot of the times they are using that. So that is another reason why you need to have a hold of the file as well. Like for me, the file is the Bible. It's got everything in there. All your email correspondence, how you came dressed, who you argued with, who likes you, who don't like you, everything's written in there. I've seen some things in the files from teachers, and they're talking about the parents, and they're emailing amongst each other, and you're like, whoa, okay, is that a mosquito? Get out of here. So that's something that is worthwhile getting. If your child does have special educational needs or additional needs whilst in school, and I find those types of cases, these cases, the most disturbing, where you've got 6 and 7 year olds who are supposed to be on, whether it be a special timetable, whether it's supposed to be given one-to-one support, whatever it may be, and it not happening, and these children having full meltdowns. You have 14 and 15 year olds who are literally during the COVID time having full meltdowns, and rather than actually being supported, what they're actually being done is permanently excluded. Now, I know at the time in 2020, the government actually gave all schools, there's a budget that they could have claimed, so that if a child is suffering from mental health or breakdown or any type of stress, bereavement, all of these things, that they would be able to tap into that budget and deliver a service to the child. With Black children, they kick them out, and it's like, well, what? Oh, but the child is violent, the child is aggressive, so it will be a threat to the schools. Because when you see the language and they've written about us, it's a threat to the school staff and society, so we can't have them at the school. Just so you know, every single one of cases like that I've had, I've overturned all of them, because it's a nonsense. To where I understand back in the day why many parents would go to the school and kick down people. Anyway, keeping it moving. So with your child, if they have special educational needs, you need to have a copy of your educational healthcare plan. You need to have a copy of the school file. You need to have a copy of their SIMS report. You need to know who the person is that is working with your child. How many other people are they working with whilst in that classroom setting? What does your child's one-to-one support look like? Because one of the things that I find, and that we all know happens a lot, is the fact that when they say that your child has been given one-to-one support, that one-to-one support worker will be working with like 6 different children, maybe even 10 children across different classes and even different age ranges, when your child has been given a budget for their one-to-one support and needs. So things like that really need to be looked at, and you can actually ask them about a breakdown of where the money's being spent, what's it being spent on, because it's not a case of, oh, give me a breakdown of where the money's been spent. No, there's a tactical way of doing it, which would be, oh, I would like to see a breakdown of where it's been spent so I can see the outcomes to my child. I want to be able to see what outcomes is working with them and working for them, so that I can duplicate it at home. You always have to do it in a nice way so that they don't get their backs up. Now, the thing is, even still, sometimes schools, their backs are up already before you do anything, before you say anything. Sometimes they just don't like your child. I've had so many cases like that where the child was literally 2 brothers. They were literally ripping out their hair and eating glass, because every day when they went into school, the deputy head, an Asian man, would literally stand over them and just be nasty, and it made no sense. So things like that. If you feel your child's being bullied as well, bullying is one of the main reasons why a lot of our children end up getting excluded. Bullying is one of the main reasons why our children end up getting excluded. Why? Because they're being bullied, no one does anything about it. So whilst they're being bullied, and if they decide to defend themselves, they are now seen as the aggressor. So this is something that, did you know? You can actually, you go to the school, you speak to the school about what the issue is. You tell them that your child's being bullied. You have to give them enough time to actually do something about it. If you're still not satisfied, you go back. You see the governors this time, so you always go up. And then you have to give them time to do something about it. If they still do nothing, then you can actually go to court. Because the thing is, you couldn't just jump to court, because a lot of parents say, I'm suing the school. Remember, there's no legal aid. I'm going to do this. You can't do much unless you go through the process. You have to go through the process first before you can jump straight to court, unless it's a disability discrimination case. It's quite different. One of the other subject areas, hi Maria, one of the other subject areas we're going to talk about as well this evening is social services. Now, we're all on social media. We all seen some of the things, the failings in social services, the failings particularly with our children. We've had, I don't know if anyone saw the image of the American couple. I know it's not in the UK, but the American couple who adopted or fostered a little black girl, and then felt that it was a good idea to go to a cotton field and stand the child in the cotton field and take a picture. I was like, wow, like the levels are just a lot. So, we're seeing this, and then the abuse that's going on in the care system. But yet, if you don't give your child the latest PlayStation 5 because they just want it, you're then accused of emotional abuse and all kinds of stuff. Social services making up lies about you. I'm going to tell you guys a story about social services, what I'm dealing with right now, just to give you an idea of some of the madness. But me, nah, take it from them. I'm not the one. So, Maria, can you introduce yourself, who you are, what you do in your specialist areas?
Hello. Hello, everybody. I feel nice and refreshed. I've just been for a steam and a sauna.
Excuse us.
That's why I just had a towel. I just had a towel on my head, and I've just had to take it off. My hair's a bit of a mess. So, hello, everybody. I've got my glass of wine as well. So, cheers, everybody. Trying to liven up the place a bit. Right then, so my name's Maria Rooney. I'm an independent social worker. I've been a qualified social worker for 20 years, and I'm a registered social worker. So if you go on Social Work England, you will see that I'm a proper registered social worker. Also, I am an ex-local authority social worker. I worked in a local authority for 12 years, which was lots of fun and games. I decided to exit out of that job in 2018 for various reasons. And I decided to set up as an independent social worker, and I've been doing it since 2018. I specialise in a lot of areas. So when I say I'm a specialist independent social worker, people often ask me, why do I call myself a specialist, which I find quite condescending and patronising, but obviously I have to answer that question. So the reason I'm a specialist, you're not going to get another social worker like me. I've got a lot of lived experience. I'm not middle, I'm not stuck up. And I've had lots of different experiences in my life. I've got 2 children myself, so I've got 2 sons. So a lot of the social workers that you will deal with that are telling you how to manage your children and deal with your children, they've got no children themselves. So I've got 2 children. I've got 2 sons, aged 9 and 14. I'm a specialist in substance misuse because I used to be a drugs worker for 10 years prior to being a qualified social worker. I'm also a specialist in domestic abuse and domestic violence because of personal lived experience. And also I worked in a women's refuge for quite a number of years. I also specialise in youth gangs and youth violence. I did Craig Pinkney's course at UCB, University College Birmingham, for a year, which was very insightful, and it went deep into why children, young people basically do what they do, and there's various reasons for that.
What time this one finishes? A different one.
Please mute your microphones.
And now my other area of specialism now is working with children with special educational needs and disabilities. And what I do now is I do independent expert reports for parents for special educational needs and disability. So that's my other area of work, but I do lots of different things. I also do independent advocacy. So if you're having problems with social services and social workers, then you can call me in, but obviously I charge a fee for that. I don't work free of charge because I have to provide for my own family and put a roof over our head and pay bills and feed my own children. So I do provide independent advocacy to parents. I am also a children's rights advocate. So if your child wanted to instruct me through you to fight for their rights or advocate for their rights, I could do that. I've done that for a few young people. And what else do I do? Anything that anyone wants me to do, really.
Well, do you know what? I'm gonna ask you guys, both of you, some questions as well, so that we can hear more from you. People have heard from me, they know who I am and what I do. And in the group, if you could just put your details as well, Maria, so that people can find you and people know how to contact you if they may need your service. And as Maria did say, and we're very unapologetic about it, all the services that you see tonight, we do charge. Because like all of us, everyone's got bills to pay, everyone needs to eat. And a lot, like Jennifer said earlier, she's been doing this for 20 years. 20 years, and she also has children and a household to run. So yes, because I've had a lot of people get very angry with me because we dare, and we charge not even half of what most legal firms charge. And you know, everyone's got bills to pay. So yes, if you definitely want to tap in and utilize their services, they are there. They are the best in their field. Otherwise, it wouldn't be on a platform with myself. You know, we only deal with the best out here. And you know, just to deliver on what they say they can do and what they can do, because I've witnessed their work myself. And I pass clients over to them myself because I know that the client doesn't need to come back to me. So with that said, I'll go to you, Jennifer, first. With regard, from since COVID to date, have you seen an increase in cases that have been brought to your firm, whether that be in education, social services, children and families, whichever area? Social services is children and families, but you get my drift.
The answer is yes. Just two things I wanted to say is, firstly, we have a contract for legal aid. So whenever you have a case, which is one where social services are threatening to take your children or are threatening to do an investigation, once they serve what they call a pre-proceedings letter, we actually can provide you with assistance if you are a parent. The sad thing is, people who are not parents don't always get funding. So if you are a biological parent, we can help you, or you're a special guardian, then definitely we can help. And that's through the legal aid agency, because I have a contract to deliver that service because we're specialists. And with regards to numbers, unfortunately, what COVID has done is it has shrunk the budget for a lot of local authorities, and it's also shrunk the number of staff. So within the field of social work, Maria will be able to tell you that people don't often stay in their places long. Social workers change quite rapidly. And unfortunately, we're seeing situations where local authorities are either rushing in without having the time to do their proper Section 47 investigations, and really cascading a mantra amongst the professionals when they're having their strategic meetings. So when they're having the person from the school, the person from the GP, they're actually circulating a mantra, not necessarily the fears that the child might have all round, or their concerns, or rather they're circulating exactly what they see as the narrative, their own narrative, not an objective narrative, which is quite dangerous, because then they're polluting the minds of those individuals, and they're coming to that strategic meeting thinking, oh, there's domestic violence, or oh, there's suspected drugs in the family, and that's not been proven properly in the investigation. And then the other thing we're seeing is where social services step back when they should be supporting a parent. So where you might have a parent who might have passed away, or a parent that is struggling because they're trying to shield the child from a parent who's abusive, social services might sit down and say, well, it's private law, you go to court. You go to court and sort that out. You might get legal aid. And they're telling these parents that they might get legal aid, whereas they know fully well that what they should be doing is starting the investigation and doing the report. Because there's no insufficient funds and insufficient people, they're sort of misleading parents or leaving them in the wind in a situation. Then when it comes down to it, maybe the parent might start the process, realize they're not getting legal aid after going from solicitor to solicitor, being in front of a judge, find themselves having to make complex statements. And then, you know, in that, excuse me, in that time, the child might come to harm. And also, excuse me, they might then blame the parents.
Have a good old cough. Get it out your chest.
So what you find is parents who are sometimes given the runaround and then blamed, and that is dangerous. That is very, very dangerous. So if you find yourself in that situation, no, you're not alone. Someone said, drink some water. Sorry, no, you're not alone. First of all, no, you're not alone. No, you're not alone. Second of all, you've got to be in it to win it. Don't check out of the process and get angry, because it's very tempting to say, look, you've left me. You've actually got to just be you've got to be very clear on what you're saying. You've got to be clear on what your failings are, because if you can log that you called this social worker, you reported things on certain days, when you try to keep note of who you're speaking to and when. And if you find yourself being forced to go to court yourself to protect your children because you reported a risk and they see either that they don't want to investigate, or they feel that you're egging the child on, you're embellishing for the child, that is them failing. That is them being negligent and them failing. And Maria will be able to tell you at times when they get it wrong, it's very hard for them later to say they've got it wrong. They'd prefer to cover up that error and make you the bad guy, you the bad parent, rather than acknowledge, oh, we failed to do this or failed to do that, because you know about the baby P cases, you know about the Maria Colombier cases, you know about these children where they were seen to have failed. They don't like to hold their hands up because that means negligence, that means civil claim, that means, you know, them in the press and having been put under a bad light. They'd rather be you, the parent, you're alienating, you're not cooperating. So rather than be tagged with that, make sure you keep sufficient records. And if it should be moved into the public arena, one of the things that you can ask a solicitor to do is to make sure that they ask that the local authority carry out a Section 17 assessment. If they say you as a parent are failing, it's like, okay, so what do I need not to fail then? Do an assessment. How should you be supporting me? How better can you support me? Since you know, there's certain things that you might not realize you're entitled to. Many of us, like Cheryl has pointed out, there's some funding that they've been given and it should be allocated in the right way. Unfortunately, a lot of the times it isn't. Why is it that I can go into court for some families that might have issues with addiction and things like that, and they get funding for courses and assessments, and I go in to represent some other families and suddenly they're overstretched and they can't use certain services and their child is still going to be at risk with them? So one certain type of family they might be more willing to support than, let me say, a Black family that might need some culturally based support that they're not willing to fund for one reason or another. And it is what it is. And much of it falls very greatly on the type of social worker that you meet. And it also falls very greatly with that social worker's level of understanding, time and commitment. If it's a young person who's come into the game, eager, just gone on a course, comes into your case, suddenly suspects you for all the things that they've done on their recent courses and doesn't have a level of cultural understanding, etc., it can be problematic. And I'm not here to slate social workers. I would never trade shoes with a social worker any day. Maria, I'd never trade shoes with you any day. It's a tough job. And we actually need more Black and ethnic social workers. We really do. I want to be very clear. Today's session is about educating the community on what should happen. It's really not about slating social workers, but it's about educating the community about what happens when you're in that situation. what you should be able to lean on and where you should be able to go for help, and what you need to do to try and challenge it. The thing is, what I would say to you is, it's not an easy road at all. Even I've been questioned by social services. Even I've been banned from my children's schools. Okay. And the reason why is because I'm a very no nonsense mum, and I have 5 kids, and I'm a single mum, and I don't play. You can sit down and call me aggressive, and I'll be like, excuse me, hello, because I'm assertive and because I don't back down when I know I'm wrong. Oh, I'm not wrong. You're calling me aggressive, or because I'm insisting that you do the right thing. Whole different, you get spoken to in a certain way when you are challenging people who don't want to admit they're wrong. The second thing I would like to say to you all who are here, if you don't mind, as we discuss, I would ask that we implement Chatham House rules. And what that means is everybody agrees what we discuss here stays here. And be careful, I did put in the chat, as we discuss, we will try not to mention people's personal names, and especially if you have an ongoing case, be very careful. As you know, there are very clear rules. If something is in court, you must not discuss it in an open forum. Okay, so please bear that in mind. You never know who's listening and who's watching. Then we might have some very interesting people among us who may not be too happy. But I intend today not to be apologetic. I intend to tell you exactly how it is and not to mince my words. So the people who go into the private arena, sadly, no legal aid. You go in, and the only way you get legal aid is if you have evidence of other exceptional extenuating circumstances. And remember, domestic violence is not just physical. It can also be emotional, financial abuse. Okay, and there are men out there who are suffering domestic violence and also who are caring for their kids. But when it comes into the private arena, they are usually automatically looked at as the pariahs. And I've seen the person in the chat. Yes, for Black fathers, it is an uphill struggle with a ton of bricks. It's hard. You're automatically seen as the aggressor, even if you are not the aggressor and you yourself are the victim of emotional abuse from a liar or from an ex-partner who uses the victim, let me say, persona to get a lot of men who are falsely accused of domestic violence. And when I say that based on the fact that, one, if you know me, you know I'm a feminist and I'm an advocate.
So stop eating it because you're going to have your dinner. You don't hear.
Somebody's talking there. So yeah. So whoever knows me knows that I'm an advocate for preventing violence against women and girls. But I have seen people use the domestic violence label to get legal aid and therefore bring their case for contact. Once you leave home, if you've been caught cheating and you're the woman, some women will use that as, oh, but he was abusive towards me. And then obviously when they go out there, they realize they can't get assistance. Oh, then there was domestic violence, and go and collect the kids from school because they realize they can't get housing. So they get the kids. Unless the father can bring that case and afford to bring it privately now, don't forget, he's been accused of domestic violence. He won't get funding automatically unless he has evidence of being the victim of the domestic violence. So then once the mother has moved out, gone to an agency, maybe her lies or whoever has lied and they're believed with regards to domestic violence, they get funding, the other person doesn't. And it does work, as I say, majority of women do that. A lot of men still suffer it. Okay, so it's really, really important that if you know you're innocent of domestic violence and you're being accused, again, don't give up. I always say to dads, don't give up, especially when they're the ones being falsely accused. For women as well, don't give up. Try your very, very best to make sure you prove your point. Try your very, very best to collate the evidence. If they say there was financial abuse, you've got bank statements to show there wasn't financial abuse. You've got people who might be able to give witness statements. If they say there was physical violence, once again, if they say it was on a certain date, if you've got pictures to show that there was no physical violence, you provide them. If you've got people that can attest to the relationship that there was no reports, you admit it. Don't get me wrong. I know that a lot of people don't report domestic violence in the first instance, but again, it's being used as a tool. And if you are the victim of domestic violence, be clear, you must make sure you reach out for help. this provision under the legal aid agency is there so you can get support, you can get injunctions, your non-molestation orders, etc. But let's move on to the element of children. When there is this allegation of domestic violence, when you are in private law proceedings, what should happen is CAFCAS, that's the Court Advisory and Family Services, should be allocated to do an assessment. They are so overwhelmed at this stage that some of their assessments are done with a few, a phone call, a few days or even sometimes hours before the hearing over the phone. By that time, they might have heard from one party and formed a view. So what we're seeing is rushed out CAFCAS reports, and some of them are not even helpful to the judge. They actually leave the judge more confused so as to make urgent decisions, unable to make urgent decisions. So you're there trying to realize that, nobody is going to give this client at this stage a proper audience. So you might have to make representations, or we have to make representations to CAFCAS officers like, hold on, you had a 15-minute conversation with this client and you've made this report. You've not acknowledged A, B, C, D, and E, and this is going before a judge. Can you kindly make sure you've done these things properly? Look at the child's welfare, get the child's opinion. Half of them don't take the child's opinion. And that is really, really sad. Again, what should happen if it becomes a very protracted case is there should be a children's guardian allocated. And that's where it becomes very, very interesting, because some guardians are excellent and some guardians form a view, which they should not do. The guardian should be the voice of the child. And once we go outside London, and I say this with respect to my people who live in counties, but once we go outside London, we see some interesting stuff happen, unfortunately. And this is where, again, I believe it comes down to training, cultural understanding, and where that's missing, anything can really happen. We had a client once accused of actually being mentally ill. We had her forcibly sectioned. It was only when a psychologist, after the 3rd month, said, look, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. By this time, her child had been taken and the child had walked on pigeon toe. So it made the child the child also later, after being assessed, had educational needs. But this woman was accused of abusing this child and she was totally innocent. And when she was seen as innocent, she was seen as in denial. When she was seen as denial, they became very intrusive into her home, unannounced visits, etc. It became quite terrible and she began to really shut them out. And the way she shut them out is just to ignore them. So they thought that she was presenting with mental ill health, whereas that was her way of actually dealing with them. Like, I'm not even going to talk to you, you're so ridiculous. So again, please continue to engage. If you have to make formal complaints, do so with support. If you don't know what that support should look like, try and go to your counsellor. If you're somebody who's not entitled to legal aid, try and look for organisations such as this one to try and help you make those representations. But yes, I really, really feel that you must be engaged, even if it's private law and you're finding it hard to fund it, try and look for organisations. Then when it comes down to public law, once again, the report can be about steps. It's about educating and informing yourself, tooling yourself up with what you need. With what you need if you are if you are in a situation when it comes down to private law, children's proceedings, or public law, as I've explained the difference. One with you and your ex-partner, or a special guardian who's had a child for a long time and you wanted to change that, or with the social services or local authority trying to make an order, a public law order around your children. So with public law children's proceedings, if somebody's made a report, what should normally happen is the social worker should carry out an investigation, as I've said. It's very, very difficult for you to know what's going on in the minds behind the scenes once the social worker has visited you. Once they've visited you, obviously they report back to their team, and a manager will make a decision on what really should happen. It becomes quite difficult when you don't have a social worker that engages, or you have one that assumes everything. You are from Somalia, so you must be cutting your daughter's private parts, or you are a Muslim, so you must be going into a forced marriage, or you want, you know, you have those that unfortunately, due to lack of training, may jump to conclusions. So this is why it's very, very important that you engage, that they see you as the parent for who you are, your qualities, etc. And don't forget, we have some of our children that will also say things in school that will lead to you being investigated. One thing that I say to my children is, I will, what do I normally say to them? I'll normally say to them, by the time I finish with you, you'll see yourself next week. Some people might say I'm threatening my children. Another thing is I say to them is, if you don't listen, I will get this ear and you will eat it. Does that mean I'm going to pull off the ear and make them eat? No, these are just things that I say. But somebody might hear me say that and think, oh my God, she's going to commit assault on her children, and then report me. Again, people report for different reasons. So far as you know that you are not abusing your child, then you should cooperate with whatever investigation and assessment is taking place. One of the things a social worker might ask you to do is to sign a Section 20 report, Section 20 agreement. Now, that is the first step of, we want to look deeper and we want to set out some things. Now, it can be difficult for you to sign these things because it's normally shoved under your nose with a pen, and you're told to sign it if you want to cooperate and see your child sooner. I often say to my clients, and everybody who knows me says, one, you don't sign something without reading it. You don't sign something under pressure, and you don't sign something that you don't understand, and you never sign something when you're under pressure without taking advice. So the first thing that you should do is say, oh, thank you, I'll have a look at that, and I need reasonable time to take advice on it. So you must be always afforded reasonable time to do things. The second thing is, sometimes they might want to assess your child, do a physical assessment on your child, okay? That means look at their body. That means taking them for a medical examination. And normally they should ask for your consent. Before coming on today, I was actually looking at the issue of consent because it's a very big issue. For religious reasons, you might not allow a male doctor to look at a certain member of your family, female or male child. And the thing is, with regards to social services and their investigations, depending on how the child presents to them, the issue of consent from the parent is one that may be overridden by a manager when they want to do a physical examination. But if there is the request to do a physical examination with your child, I would say ordinarily consent. Sorry, I'm just muting people. I would ordinarily say consent so that you don't have additional suspicion put on you, especially if you're innocent. But the problem is, when you do consent, it can be, how long is this examination going to take? When is it going to take place? Can I be present outside the room? Yes, all those other things to safeguard yourself should also be put in place. I had a situation once where a client agreed to the examination, was told to come immediately to the hospital. So she was panicked. She was rushing with the child there. And on getting there with the child, a person that she'd accused of abuse was also there. And she was being told to hand the child over because of the suspicion. And I said to her, no. She called me. Luckily enough, she was wise enough to call me. I said, get in the car, get to my office. There's no court order. You were taken there you were told to meet people there under false pretenses. And if anything, if they want you to hand the child over to anybody, there should be a Section 20. So she was actually being treated absolutely wrongly, not even unreasonably. That was completely wrong. But a parent under pressure who's being told, oh, you've got to do this by a social worker or by individuals might think, okay, this is what I have to do. And that is one thing that really does get on my nerves, when parents are misled, because the consequences of such is, if she had done that and she'd gone to court maybe in 48 hours time, they would have said, and we took the children because of suspicion. Whereas they actually had no right and they hadn't even concluded their investigation. The next thing that should really happen is there should be a proper Section 47 investigation where they actually collate family members, bring them in and other agencies. But as I've said, the caution there is, as a solicitor, when I know that's happening, I've learned over time that I want to see what is being circulated to other professionals. Because if it says, father is suspected of being an alcoholic or a suspected gambler or suspected of targeting vulnerable women, again, it's like, hold on a minute, you haven't finished the investigation. Why are you circulating that to prejudice the minds of other professionals? Of course, the concerns have to be circulated to other professionals, but words matter. Words matter, especially when it's unproven allegations, and they must be curtailed in a balanced form. What if dad also has concerns with regards to the manner in which he's being dealt with, also feels that there's been a level of prejudice and can prove it from words that have been said to him, or he suspects that ex-partner has been lying and can prove it from a pattern of behavior? Things like that often are not taken into consideration or circulated to professionals. Once again, the focus has to be on the child, not on our individual feelings, even if they're emotive or cultural. It has to be on the risks that surround that child. And often, it can be lost in the mix. The voice of the child can also be lost in the mix because of what parent or because of what social workers, parents and other professionals all feel. But again, wherever possible and when the child is of an appropriate age, you should listen to the child. If the child is saying, look, I actually want to live with my dad, my mum's chaotic, I want to live with my dad, that should not be lost in the mix, even if dad has been labelled one thing or another in the past. And if a child says, look, I want to live with my mum, I don't like the way my dad or my stepdad or I'm treated by step siblings, then it might not be an automatic removal situation. It might be a case, okay, this family needs some integration support. It needs some bonding support. We could set out a plan for this. Or even if it is a case temporarily, as parents, we need to understand what's happening with this child. They're making false allegations left, right and centre. Again, parents might want to sit down and think, okay, let's come to an agreement where she stays with auntie so-and-so, a safe place or wherever, until we actually rebond with this child. Look, why are you saying these things? What is it? Do you want to be going out with your friends? We don't tolerate that in our house. You want to be on the phone till midnight on whatever TikTok app. And that might not be the case. You know, that might be the case. It might be a conflict of parenting regime as well as child's desires. So as parents, you've also got to try and figure out what the issues are, especially if you are being accused of something and you say you're innocent. And finally, you also have to remember to listen to the child, because if what the child is saying is true, then you have to give them that respect. If it is a case of, look, I don't like the way that pastor gives me a hug at the end of service. If it's a case of, I don't like the way so-and-so tells me to come round, the way they look at me, then rather than, again, forcing your children to engage with every adult that comes into their space, respect that the child actually does have a right to say no and have a right to their own space. So again, as a parent, you've also got to take note and listen to what the child says. And so at the end of the investigation, there should be a report, and that report should be balanced with an input from all of the professionals. The professionals might not write in the report, but the person who collates it will put it together. We're in a global society as well. So don't think that if you're having issues in one borough and you move, you end up getting free, because what will happen is normally the borough you're leaving will give notification to the new borough. It's best to sit down and sort out the problem, engage, as I've said in the past. The other thing is we're in a global society where parents here are seen not to be fit. What often happens is they're not quick to look locally for fostering anymore, especially if the child's of a certain age. They might look to who is good in your home country or within your family. That's if the local authority have the time, but this is a bit difficult and tetchy. We often see special guardianship arrangements with family overseas fail. I've seen that because there's been that quick assumption that, oh, they can go to this family in Italy or Spain. And it's like, okay, you've gone there once, it looks okay. The person is more or less agreed because emotionally it's a child from their family. They want to look after, they want to be helpful, but they don't realize that that is a long-term commitment. And if that child turns out to have special education needs and desires, it suddenly becomes a bit of a burden. And also local authorities, as I've said, strap for cash, some of them. So the payments might be coming late and not be consistent, and that person get tired. So it can also be an issue. Special guardianship is a really important thing. Again, if you are having a situation in your family whereby a child is seen to be at risk, wanting to be moved from parents because they're not able to maintain their parenting skills, if you feel you can look out for a child, why not? I would say, why not? Again, if you feel that you can be a foster parent, again, why not? We really have a shortage in our community, and you might be that stopgap in helping that parent look after their child until they're ready to get back on their feet. So again, another appeal out to you in the community that if you are able to open up your heart and your home to a child and be a foster parent, contact your local authority. They have training sessions, they have packages that might help you. And if you feel that you are able to be a special guardian where it's been determined that, look, the parents are not fit, you may be the next person so that the child stays in the family to raise the child, then have that discussion and search your heart and your time and your skills to see if you can really offer that child a home within the family. As I've said, I'm happy to answer questions, but I wanted to raise two things before I go. The issue of a child advocate is really important if you feel you're in proceedings and your child's voice is not being heard, as Maria said. The reason why this is important is because if you have a level of bias in a courtroom, they will not want your parent will not want your child's voice. Parent who is being falsely accused of things or trying to stand up for the child may be seen as biased. So it's always important that if the guardian is, if you're in your idea or in your mind failing, to try and get try and ask for the child to have their own advocate. Really, really important. The other issue is alienation. I don't know if you've heard of this. It's a concept. Some people say it's real, some people don't agree with it. Me personally, I've seen that where it's been wrongly labeled, it can go really nasty for a child. Parental alienation, where one parent is accused of keeping a child from seeing another parent. But what I've seen is children nowadays are quite forthright in what they want. You can drive a child to Scotland to see a parent, and if they say, look, I'm not getting out of the car, I don't want to spend time with that person, I've told you. If they're a teenager or they're a forthright young person and they say that, then, you know, what can you do? It's not that you're preventing the child, so the child is forthright. And if the child may have their own reasons, but there is a concept within family law that can actually vilify parents if they're accused of alienation. Yes, some parents are bad mind. Some are very bad mind and won't let the picnic see the parent who's left the relationship. But then again, some children have their reasons why they've not bonded, why they don't want to have a certain relationship with another parent. The other thing I wanted to quickly say to you was, with regards to teachers, Maria said something really, or was it Cheryl that said something really, really important. Making sure if they say that your child is having one-on-one sessions with somebody, making sure that person is qualified. I've seen some madness, absolute bonkers stuff happen, and they're considered to be specialist emotional mental health teachers. And it's like, oh, okay, where's your qualification? What have you been doing with the child? You've been doing what? And it's like, so you're actually trying to play with the child's money. You're not even qualified. Please, if things are happening around your child, find out who, what, and how they're qualified to do that. You know, and then again, your parenting rights are not diminished unless a court says they are. So this is why I was discussing that issue with consent. Yes, your consent can be overridden in some certain situations, but always try to challenge it. And then finally, I will end on human rights. It is your right to have a level of family life. It is your right for your child it's your right for your child to have a relationship with their siblings. Okay, that's full half an extended family. So when anybody wants to interfere with your right to have a family life, a private family life, where you set your values, so far as you're not hurting anybody, then it's something that you should challenge. So that's all I have to say at this time, and I'm available for questions. Maria and Cheryl, if there's anything else you wanted me to cover, please let me know.
No, thank you, Jennifer. Can everyone maybe send a hand into the chat just to show Jennifer some love? Because she gave a whole load of very, very useful information that usually £250 an hour. And you got that tonight, live and direct. So, you know, and I know a lot of it was useful. I'm watching the chat going like crazy. So, you know, that's good. So even Maria, I don't know if there's a bit of crossover.
Yeah. Can I just say something?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right, so there's a lot of questions going on here. I can't answer every single question. So basically, I'm telling people now that if they want a free 30-minute telephone consultation for advice, they need to email me, because I'm getting a lot of questions. I can't talk and answer questions at the same time. So I'll put my email address on there, and I provide free 30-minute telephone consultations. So
free.
What else?
One thing we love free. So yes, get that email.
And it's 30 minutes. And I'm asking people to email me. And the reason why I'm asking people to email me, as Cheryl well knows, we are not on call 24/7. I do not appreciate getting calls and texts and WhatsApps and Facebook messages at 7, 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning. So I've got my own family, I've got my own children. We're not on call 24/7. My working hours are 10 till 3, Monday to Friday. So I can take my children to school and pick them up and then spend time with my children afterwards. So my working hours are Monday to Friday, 10 till 3. I don't work at weekends. And can you email me and not ring me out of the blue, or because I'm a very busy person. I'm here, there and everywhere. I travel all over the country. I might be driving, so I can't answer phone calls just like that. And I'm not on call 24/7 as an advice person.
So Maria, seeing as you're there, I was going to say, so even with regards to what you've seen and your experience with, you know, social care. See, Jennifer's from a legal perspective, so she knows how the law needs to work. From your experience and even your perspective with some of the challenges and some of the things our children face, because I know your specialist area is Black and mixed race children. Explain, give people something, give them something so they know what to do. Let me mute myself.
So basically, wait, I'm just putting my email address, Right, so basically, I specialise in working with Black children, young people and families. I also specialise in working with Asian children, young people and families. I'm getting a lot of referrals from Asian parents. So it's across the board. It's not just Black parents, it's Black, Asian, but I do get a lot of referrals from Black parents. Most of the cases that I have are from Black parents. The reason I specialise in working with Black children, young people and families is because 1, I'm mixed race. 2, my children are mixed race. 3, my mum is Black. And 4, I've always worked in the Black community in Black organisations for the last 30 years. So it's something that I'm very passionate about. Black parents, children, young people are discriminated against in every single service that we have going in this country. The institutional racism there's institutional racism, institutional corruption, and institutional discrimination in every single service. You have it in the police. Obviously, we know have it in the police. You have it in social services. You have it in mental health services. You have it in education. Every single service you will be involved with is institutionally corrupt, institutionally racist, and institutionally incompetent. And even me, as a social worker, I have to deal with it every day. So I feel sorry for parents. This is why I help parents, because to navigate the system, so if your child has got mental health problems, or is struggling at school, or is in the care system, or has got... Wait, I'm on the way. Sorry. Parents have a lot to deal with. So, you know, they can be struggling and fighting the education system. They can be struggling and fighting the social care system. If your child has got any special needs or mental health or disabilities, you can be fighting a health system. And it's very, very hard to navigate all these systems. And that's why parents need independent advocates. It's very, very stressful. It's very, very traumatic. And it's very, very time consuming, fighting for your child and fighting for you and fighting for your voice to be heard and fighting for your child's voice to be heard, because nobody wants to listen to your child. So you have to be the voice of your child. So it's a very, very hard, it's very, even me, I get stressed out. I'm a parent, I get stressed out with it. So if you've got various agencies involved and you're constantly fighting the system, it will wear you down. And it's really, I'm telling you now, it's very traumatic, very stressful, especially, so if you're dealing with police, social services, education and health, then because they're all incompetent, they're all corrupt and they're all racist. So it's very, very hard to navigate all of those systems.
And just to say, Maria, sorry to cut you, but just also parents know that when you're going through this, I've been through it. That's the reason I started the Black Child Agenda. You're not alone. And the reason why we who have been there have started these types of agencies is because we know that the system is flawed. We know, so we've mastered the craft of the system to make sure we can represent you in the community. So don't feel that you're the only one that's going through what you're going through, because trust me, there's what, 70 of you on this call. And imagine everybody that wanted to be on this call was on this call, you'd see the fact that it's more common. And the amount of Black children and young people in particular, don't get me wrong, I know it happens across the board, but it's disproportionate with the numbers of us that are in this country, even though I'm in Ghana, the numbers of us that are in this country, as well as, you know, when you look at prisons, you look at social services, you look at care homes, you look at all of these places and the criminalization of particularly the young Black male and female from a young age. Because Jennifer, you mentioned something earlier about Black parents coming forward to foster and adopt. But then when sometimes Selena's iPhone, when you're criminalized, as Maria said, from a young age, then the likelihood of social services looking at you as a candidate is almost zero. Is it done on purpose? Or is
I was gonna say to you, Maria, when you say there's corruption, there are still some good people, but still every day I still have get reminded of situations. I was actually in court on one case, and the person that was supposed to make a very important decision said, "I don't understand what you mean by insisting on a culturally appropriate expert." And, you know, when you've got that situation, that means that that person who has to make such an important decision is damming down the relevance of that child's culture in these proceedings. You have to, you know, as a lawyer, it means I just have to sit up stronger and realize that, listen, you need a bit of an education and I'm going to be the one to give it to you, you know, and it's not going to be and it has to be in an educative way, because that's my job as the lawyer, to outline that it's that child's right to have their culture influence whoever's going to be caring for them for the rest of their life. And the way that child speaks and how that child's interpreted has to be taken into consideration within the proceedings. And it's hard to convey that. A lot of assumptions get made. And as you say, there is, unfortunately, bias and prejudice that is in our community.
Can I also say that if your child is under youth offending service as well. So basically all these services and agencies can collude against parents. So if your child is under the youth offending service, they're part of the local authority. So all youth offending teams and all local youth offending services are under local authorities, and they will all collude against you. I've seen it for myself working in the system, where all the services will hide information. They will cover up a lot of things and they will all collude against you. So that can be a youth offending service who is part of the local authority, social services, they all work together and they will all collude against you. And if education are involved too, that's even worse. So what happens is, what they'll try and do is try and get teachers and the head teachers on board and try and get all these allegations. And, you know, I've had been in child protection meetings where teachers and heads have made false allegations against children. And, you know, these children are on child protection plans. So basically, the whole system is corrupt. You cannot trust anybody. When you are going into any meetings, please take somebody with you. Do not go in those meetings by yourself, even if you take a friend or a family member, because they will twist everything you say. They will try to manipulate you, and they will try to break you down, and they will try to destroy you. So please do not enter into any meetings by yourself with people you do not trust. Even me, I had a stage 3 complaint panel hearing with my son's school, and there was 5 people there. I thought, and I'm a social worker, I did not feel safe going into that meeting by myself, and I took my local counsellor. And I'm very vocal, I'm very assertive, I'm very confident, and I know my shit inside out. So even me as a social worker, if I'm going into somewhere where I don't feel safe, I have to take somebody with me. So I'm always advising people, do not enter these meetings and these situations by yourself, because they will twist everything you say, manipulate everything you say, try to control you, try to dominate you, and try to put words into your mouth. And you do get some social workers that want to be friends and, oh yeah, I'll have a cup of tea, and oh yeah, you know, like, but they're trying to manipulate you. They're trying to get information from you, and don't fall for it. And don't tell them all your business. I've represented a parent at a school. Usually I don't attend meetings at school because I don't like teachers, and I don't like heads, and I don't like schools. So I said I'll do it on this occasion only because you've been recommended to me by a friend. So I went with her. It was some school out in the sticks, all white teachers, all white heads, mostly white children. She was a mixed race mother, children were mixed race. And basically, she told them certain aspects about her life. And I says, why did you tell them that? I says, why are you chatting your business with these teachers? I says, because they will use it against you. So she told them stuff that she shouldn't have told them about, various things. And I says, do not ever do that again. They went and done a referral to social services, and they were all over her like a ton of bricks. So please do not chat your business with professionals. Keep it very limited, and also tell your children not to chat their business or your family's business or what goes on in your house to professionals too, because you will get referred to social services and they will be all over you.
Right, so I'm going to jump on one quick one. Academies, all schools are going to be academies, so you're not going to be able to get away from that. With regards to information, a lot of people have asked me all the time, how do I get my child's school file, etc. And that's just a standard GDPR request. GDPR came in 2018, and it is across the board with all services. So you can do that for social services as well. You can get a GDPR request to see what information they are holding on you, all the facts, what they call the facts of your case. Like I said in the beginning, you need to be armed with as much information as possible so that you can successfully, if necessary, challenge what is being said, accusations that are being made, if there is any supporting evidence with what's been said, etc., etc. It is, as Maria said, very, very scary, because, you know, it's all of these agencies against you. And there is a risk of maybe you losing your child, or your child being excluded from school, whatever it may be. But yet you can get a GDPR request to social services, to the police, to the doctors. You can ask for your records, they're your records. So you can actually request a copy, and they are allowed up to 40 days to get that to you. It's almost biblical, the fact that they've chosen such an amount of time. But if you really want to try and challenge whatever has been written about you, then that's the way to do it. Otherwise, you're playing guesswork, and you're going into these meetings unarmed, uninformed, and with just your opinion, because what you think and what you say may not be what is written down. And not to say what they've written down is necessarily fact, but it is something that from once you see it and you spend the time and you read it, and I can go back to the education side. If I get the school file And I can go back to parents and say, well, hold on a minute, on this date and this time, it clearly says that, you know, your son went into school and headbutted a young girl who was completely unprovoked, etc., etc., etc. And then you can then probably remember, oh, I remember the time when the teacher did say something, you know, Kwame, what happened on that day? And then this way now you start building your own case so that way you can challenge what has been said. Because I've read some of these files about you guys children and I'm like, rotted. This is like Satan has come. And the things that are written, particularly about Black males and the over-sexualization of Black girls within a lot of these records is alarming, it's disgraceful, but they get away with it because they can. Even if, say, for example, there's been, the words that they will use would be sexual assault. They love this word. Sexual assault is there. And that could be your son or daughter has brushed past a teacher, maybe they're flat ass, brushed past them, and now your child is up for sexual assault. And the school will call the police. They have done on many occasions. And then now you've got to actually defend your child and defend yourself. When all your child did was brush past. You need to see, and then when you ask them, why have you written this? They then will say, well, that's the only part of the form that they could fill out, and that's all it is. So that means that the form needs to be changed, but you're not going to know that unless you've actually got the information in front of you. When they're sending you a school file, you can ask for that school file. I don't even know what image this is on my screen. You can ask for the school file to be sent electronically. You know, so because now since COVID, everything's online, they do a lot of the meetings on Teams, etc., etc. You can ask for it electronically. So you can get it electronically, and that way it makes it easier to share as well. Go on, Jennifer, I know you wanted to say something.
Yeah, what I wanted to say is I was approached by a parent who told me, because somebody actually whistle blew and said that she should just ask for her son's file. I didn't realize that the file from primary school transitions to secondary. And what was on that file was completely erroneous. So she now wants to take action because it's determined how her son is being treated in his secondary school. An allegation that even included her. That is completely false. Completely
That's why
false.
you need the file. This is why you need to know what you're up against.
You know, as a result of that particular incident, it's made me realize the absolute importance of the file. The other thing was just to go to something that Maria said, which was taking notes in meetings and having somebody accompany you. Most recently, I discovered that every local authority should have a policy on recordings. So as a parent, if you sit down and say, do you know what? I've been falsely accused so many times in this situation that I'm sorry, in order to document what's being said so I'm not misquoted, do you mind if I just take a recording? You will find that some social workers will say, no, I don't want you recording me at all. You will find in some meetings, again, they'll say, no, it's against our policy. And some professionals will refuse to talk in the meetings. And others will be all right with it. The issue is Kafkas said that there should be no issue with a parent recording, covert or not. And that is actually there. But each local authority, so that's not the court's family advisory, this is the local authority will have its policy. So if you are in a situation that is fractious, so if you're in a situation that is fractious and people are accusing you falsely, then you might outline and send an email to everybody saying, given the fact that I've been misquoted, I'm going to be taking detailed recordings and notes of our interactions. Thank you. And they get quite up on the air on that because they'll say that you're paranoid. So you have to just correct it that no, because I've been misquoted, I'm just doing this as a safeguard for us all. Thank you. And say whatever you say, don't come across aggressive, abruptious, curt. Just be very clear that it's to make sure that everything's done accurately. That's if you have to do that. Hopefully you will not have to do that. All right. But again, if they say that you're not allowed to, first of all, ask them what is their policy on recording meetings, because you need to be able to go back over what's been said, or you need to be able to review things properly, and you don't have enough time to write everything. This is quite important. I remember somebody being misquoted in a meeting. It was so bad that it almost led to the person being investigated. And when it came back to what was noted, it was what the particular professional had said was completely wrong. And if that person was not able to fall back on that information, they could have found themselves asking me to come to a police station to get them, not just come to family core group meetings and court, civil court. So how things are recorded and what you've said is detailed so that you're not misquoted, taken out of context, things are not misinterpreted, is quite important. So that's why you've got to be clear and engaging. And as Maria said, whenever possible, try to have somebody with you that can be your support. It can be quite an emotional, fractious time as well. So if you can have somebody to support you, but if you're not, if you're alone, and believe me, I understand when you are alone. I'm a parent, as I said, of 5. I've given birth to 1 child on my own. I was mistreated by midwives. I had no one to talk to in that labor ward, you know, until I could call my family in and said, look, these people almost kill me here. It can be hard as a single parent, male or female. So what you have to look to is somebody trusted in the community, your counsellor, as you've heard there. You can ask somebody in your local district they don't necessarily have to be qualified. They can be there just to help, be your support. That is, especially if it's not a closed meeting of professionals. If it's something like a school meeting, yes, why not? If it's another trusted parent in the school as well, you could try that, or somebody from within your local community who you trust from your church, etc. Once again, if you're in a community organization and you want somebody to sort of be more clued up on these things because you've got more demand, especially post-COVID, why not speak to Cheryl about having some, you know, workshop with Cheryl or with Maria and myself, so that you can have the tools to have that person in your community group able to support parents who are going through things, because there's not a lot of support out there. I've seen in the chat people who are saying they're alone and they're in these situations. So I fully understand.
And even with that, like you said, going in the meetings and taking minutes is big. Someone asked in here, do they take minutes? Do they not take minutes in the meetings? Yes, they do, but you still need your own. They're taking their minutes for their records. It's got nothing to do with you. And they don't have to give you...
Let me tell you, these things are supposed to be recorded. Don't forget this. You say they're being not done on Teams, but sometimes they'll tell you there's no record. And you know there was a record. So if he didn't have this, I wouldn't have been able to just shove it down their throat. So it's sometimes it can be better. I will tell you now, it's imperative you take your own records if you can.
100%, 100%. Because I've sat there. Do you know what's funny? Even when I go back to the school file, I'll tell you the funniest thing. I remember there was a parent and she contacted me at like 5 o'clock in the morning. I was so mad. In England in the middle of winter. You know, it's dark outside. My phone's blowing. 4, 5, ring. So I'm mad. Then I waited because I don't answer my phone before 9 o'clock. Why should I? How dare you? Anyway, she spoke to me eventually and was telling me about her son and that she had already requested the school file because she'd seen one of my videos. I was like, perfect. So she had the school file, she sent it to me, you know, she signed up with our service, etc. Then her son was on the way to being permanently excluded. And within that time, and within a matter of days, the son, like say, for example, it's Monday, she just received the school file. By Thursday, the son had been permanently excluded. The following week now, we've gone to a meeting. The file was like this. By the time we entered the, oh, sorry, you can't see. The file was like this. By the time we entered the meeting, the file was like this. All of a sudden, there's all this new information, all these letters that they had sent to her, all these meeting requests, all these forms that they had filled out to get him the support he needed. All of these things just happened to miraculously appear, but she had never received one page of it, and it is nowhere in the file. Even if there's nothing going wrong right now, get a copy of the file, because you need to keep a trail, you need to keep a chase. And it is like going to war. You're sending your child into a battlefield every day. And I know that sounds like the worst case scenario, but just to prevent anything negative happening, it's better to be forewarned and forearmed then, or forearmed, forewarned, you know what I'm talking about. Just to know that you can then jump on, if there is anything in there, you can jump on it immediately and be able to work with the school. Because remember, this isn't about you going into war with the school per se. This is about you making sure that if you have to send your child into their environment, that your child gets the best out of their time whilst they're there. Your child, and then even with the work that I do, And many of you may agree with me, many of you may not. But as far as I'm concerned, whatever is going wrong with your child whilst they're in their care, it is their fault, not yours. Your child spends more time in the school environment than they do with you. Your child spends more time.
It's their job to safeguard your child. It is
Exactly.
Their job to
so whilst you're there, whilst you're not there, they are effectively the parent, which is why when a lot of you come to me about they got your child to sign a form, they got your child to do this, please mute your microphones if you're not speaking, they got your child to do that, because they are acting as your child's parent whilst you're not there. Most children now spend between 30 and 40 hours a week. Some schools start at 8 and finish at 5. You get in from work at what, 6, 7. You see your child, how was your day? Do you have homework? Maybe you might catch up on the weekends, or they go to supplementary education, which is going to be another one of our talks. So who actually is raising, or not even raising your child, but who's got more input over your child? So then when they're now saying that it's your fault that your child is not sitting still in class, that it's your fault that your child doesn't do as they're told, but hold on a minute, my child's with you most of the time. And at the end of the day, we're talking about my child, my 5, 6, 7-year-old, my 15 and 16-year-old. We're talking about a child. So how is my child able to break the screen of the laptop, even though he has a full EHC plan? How is it that my child was able to choke on his food, even though you're supposed to have a professional with him to make sure he doesn't choke on his food? Why is it that my child managed to have the front of his locks ripped out of his hair and bite marks in his face? How is that possible when he is in your care? How? So for me, whenever I go in with a school or anybody else, an educational healthcare plan, that's if your child has an additional need. If I go into them, I'm going in with, we're talking about a child. And this is I want to know what you were doing, why you weren't doing your job properly as the professional and as the adult in this situation. Why did it take 3 of you to pin my son down on the floor when he's screaming that he can't breathe? Why is my son having a full and complete meltdown? And you knew yesterday, the day before, and the day before that he was saying he was hearing voices. He doesn't feel comfortable. He's been bullied outside school by drug dealers. All of these things are happening. Why is it that you as the parent have gone to the school to speak to them about the fact that you fear for your child's life, but now your child's dead because they failed to do anything or even raise a concern or raise a safeguarding concern and get a team around the child meeting or anything else put in place to support you and the child? Because when it works the other way, they're quick to say that you weren't engaging. They're quick to say that you didn't do something. But at the end of the day, that 30 and 40 hours a week being spent by your child in their care, how is it going so wrong? So that's how I look at it. As far as I'm concerned, I'm coming for you as the adult. I'm coming for you as the adult. You need to explain to me and mum and dad why their child is now kicked out of school, why their child is being harmed in school, why their daughter can't go to the toilet when she's on her monthly cycle and ends up bleeding out all over the floor, why all of these things are happening when you're supposed to be safeguarding my baby, who I leave entrusted into your care. You're being paid a salary at the end of every month to look after my child, but you're failing in your duty of care towards my child. That's how I look at it. So I hope that helps. I just
wanted to speak to parents, especially those who are parenting teens. We do have quite a clear issue with regards to gang culture in certain cities, okay? So some people may target your child being a single parent, knowing that you're not around, you're at work a lot. Some may target your child because they're vulnerable, because they're on low income. So you've also got to be a bit wary about these things. And if you report your concerns and suddenly they're not safeguarding your child, but they're focusing on you, considering you as the one that's neglectful, then that's something that you should actually please sit up and respond to properly, so that the proper support is given to protect your child and the child's not lost in the mix. A lot of the time the professionals there throwing accusations and they lose sight of the risk, the person who's at risk, which is the child, and also losing sight of who is targeting the child, which is not necessarily the parent. The other thing you need to be aware of is you should reach out to not just the police, but the police housing, your housing and social services. If you feel you are being targeted or your child is being targeted, you can be moved. You can be provided with accommodation in a safe place. And that has to be really something that you canvass for. Sometimes there's a break in communication between these agencies, but sometimes the police can be clear, but then housing say there's no provision. So we would be able to get an injunction in situations like that. And once again, if your child is excluded, and that's something you touched on before, Cheryl, unless the placement that they're going to is able to cater for their needs, you can try to challenge it. Then also, if it's a placement that is not Ofsted approved, if your child and you do not approve of the placement, it can only be allocated by a High Court judge. If it's a place, and I'm seeing a lot of boys being put in places that are not Ofsted approved, because they may be mixed up in gangs or the school has excluded them. And because the local authority has a duty to provide your child with educational input, no matter what. If your child is really bad, excluded from everywhere, they still have a duty to give them a level of educational input and assess them. So if the assessment hasn't been done, but your child is being labelled, then look, they must be assessed. Not just the Section 17, but for the educational healthcare plan, the ECHP that people have been asking for in the chat, that's one. And also for special educational needs. A lot of the children are autistic and undiagnosed. A lot of them have other neurological issues going on and undiagnosed because they've not been properly assessed. But if it does mean that you've unfortunately passed that barrier and your child has somehow been excluded, where they are being pushed to through, even if it's not the through and it's someone that is not registered or not Ofsted registered or not approved, then you have to sit up and think, what are you going to be doing, my child, all day long there? What is the input? Because there is a duty for your child to have a level of educational input. And we've unfortunately seen some situations where kids are sitting down playing games and finding ways to just be more manipulative than may have already been, or amongst children that have specific needs that are not in line with their own, so they're actually regressing educationally. So
can I just, you see where you mentioned that with special educational needs is a huge one. I know that the chat's going crazy with regards to EHC plans, etc. And one of the things with regards to knowing parents, a lot of you I see, and it breaks my heart to you have to put up a wall. With all of us that are doing this, we have to be armored, and we're just literally matter of fact and factual about what we're doing. And it's not because we don't care and we don't have a heart, we're all parents, but what it is that it's so jarring seeing and knowing the fact that you're not getting the right support. For example, you feel that your child is struggling. Let's just, for want of a better word, is struggling in school, is struggling with loud noises. And there are some clear signs that tell me straight away, that's only because of what I do, that your child is probably on the borderline of ASD, autistic, ADHD, and ODD seems to be coming up a lot, but that's another conversation for another day. But nonetheless, if your school is not supporting you with getting an educational healthcare plan or getting your child assessed, because 72% of the prison population of Black males, young Black males, are children that have been undiagnosed with a mental disorder or something that was never picked up on or was not treated whilst they were in school. They weren't given the right support. So with this, everything you do, please put it in writing. Put everything, send it via email. If you don't know how to send an email, get your daughter or your son or your cousin or somebody, even dig up the dead dog and make them send it in writing. Because the thing is, you're going to say, oh, I called and I spoke to Mrs. Blah, blah. She was really nice. And she said she's going to do it for me. 6 months later, oh, yeah, because Mrs. Blah, blah reassured me. Later, nobody ain't got time for that. At the end of the day, we're talking about the safeguarding of your child. And if anything goes wrong, they're coming down for you. So you make sure everything you need to say is done in writing. I don't mean pages and pages and pages and pages and sending emails constantly daily, because then they'll block you. You send a clear and concise email. My child, I believe it needs to be assessed. Can I speak to someone in your Senko team? Boom, boom, boom. Wait for the response. If they don't respond and you keep emailing and they still don't respond, the doctor will refer you to CAMS. In many local authorities, CAMS have a 3 to 5 year waiting list. Your child doesn't have 3 to 5 years. Do you know what you do? You go directly to the local authority. You go directly to the local authority, to the education department, and you say that you email them again, and that sometimes it's on their site, but you want the educational healthcare plan form or the individual learning plan form. They will send it to you, more than likely by post. Nowadays, hopefully it should be via email. You fill out the parts in there that are relevant to you about your child's behavior, what you see he does, what his triggers are or her triggers are, etc., etc. It's more prominent in boys than girls. And then you send it back to the local authority. Now, this process that I'm going to tell you takes at least 3 months. You send it back to the local authority. In turn, by law, the local authority now send it to the school. The school have to fill it out. They have to fill out the part that is relevant to them and their Senko department, whether your child is on the SEND register or not, they have to fill it out. So then once they've filled it out, they have to send it back to the local authority. The local authority will then now, with the school, arrange a meeting between you, the school, not necessarily the educational psychologist, to discuss what the concerns are. They then will have to appoint an educational psychologist to monitor your child for between 3 to 5 days. Sometimes it can be 2 weeks whilst they are in school. The educational psychologist, which we call EPs, will then write a report. That report will then go into the information and be sent back to the local authority. Another meeting will be held with all of you present. And they will also give recommendations within there. All those recommendations are what the school is supposed to do, and obviously you support at home. Then thereafter that, what you will do is then everyone will read it. You can take out bits that you agree with, don't agree with what the school have written, and you come to a common ground. That will then be sent back to the local authority yet again. And then from there, now the final draft or the final plan will be sent back to the school, yourself and all parties involved, and the school are supposed to follow it. Supposed to. I never said will, I said supposed to follow it.
You've seen a lot of people in the chat saying that local authorities are refusing, academies are not included. And yes, if you are in a situation where your school is somehow refusing, you can write to the local education authority and make your complaints. You can also report them to Ofsted and make the complaints. But yes, the school's budgets mean that some schools are willing and some schools are hesitant and some schools are slow. The other thing that you mentioned was CAMS. They are really, really oversubscribed at the moment. And again, high turnover of staff. I've got families who have children and receiving service and they get used to a certain counsellor and therapist, and suddenly that person has left and there's a lack of continuity in their therapeutic input, which is really sad. So we know that there are struggles out there, but please take this information that you're receiving. Take this information that you're receiving so that you know what should be happening.
So I've got 3 hands up in the chat. Joy and Joy, you can go first because I believe you have a question. Please lower your hand after you've asked your question though. And then we've got Galaxy Hannah. Oh, hello Hannah. And then we've got, I can't see the other hand where it's come from. Let me see. Can you guys see? Oh, there's 4 hands up now. Well, first of all, Joy, did you have a question? Oh, I can lower your hand myself. Joy.
Hi there, thank you for all the information. Yeah, my query, I did speak to Jennifer, it has been sorted. And thank you so much, Jennifer, for responding. But it was just really about anything regarding guardianship. If parents can put like an appointed guardian that they would want to have to look after their child if anything was to happen to them. If this can be handwritten, put into a will as a legal document, or if we have to go to court and get the special guardianship application form. So I've had a lot of different answers by different solicitors. Some say you can put it into a will until the child's 18, or some, and then I've had other people say you need to fill out an application form to get special guardianship. So I'm just thinking if there is a way to appoint a guardian, you know, what form is it? Because online it just says special guardianship form. I don't know if there's different variations of the form. But yeah, it is just about if you was to appoint anyone that is not related to you, so a family friend or even a partner, for those that do want guardianship for their child.
Yeah, as I said, I did reply you. Anybody who feels that they need to share parental responsibility can apply to court to do that. And if, you know, even me, I had COVID. And when I had COVID, when I was lying on my sitting room floor thinking, man, I'm going to die here, I was thinking, actually, what does my will say? Is my will up to date? Because I could put in there what should happen to me and who should care for my children. And that's what you should do. That should be your first place. But if you feel the need to share parental responsibility, and if you're coping, there should be no reason, because that could be quite touchy. It could go the wrong way. What if you fall out with the person you're sharing with? What happens to your kid then? Be careful. But you can do that. You can do that legally. But also, if the child is disabled and you might need to appoint somebody in a more legalized way, then yes, there is that ability. But unless you're ill, or unless the child has specific needs, it should just be something you know in your will. If you feel the need, you have to share because, as I say, you're ill, you're not coping, or the child spends a lot of time with another person who needs to exert parental responsibility, then that's something you can do. Yes, you can fill out a form, fill out a C2 and do that, a C100 and do that in court, and the judge will hear you and appoint that person or do partly a live with order to satisfy that particular need for that child.
So then we've got the next question is from Galaxy A32 on the 5G technology. Hannah, you can unmute Hannah. Let me click it for you. I don't think Hannah's there. All right, let's move down to Nat. Nat,
hello everyone.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry,
so
is
Cheryl,
this Hannah? Oh, Nat, yeah, hi,
Nat. So Cheryl, you've already touched on that, you know, parents can do their own self EHC assessment. I done one in 2019, which was successful, but to be honest, I'm not even in the school system with my child because it's a complete waste of time. Because yeah, it's just not even administered properly once you do get it. And that's for parents of all races from the groups that I've been in. Yeah, I've had to take a lot of, I've had to take on the schooling myself, the home education, because it's a complete waste of time. I have now managed to get education advertising at school, but parents can complete the EHC assessment. You don't need to wait for the school. And I went through, you know, paediatricians, through GP referrals, school referrals. You don't have to wait for CAMS. I know services they've changed slightly since COVID, but there are other health professionals that could contribute to reports for an EHC assessment with the local authority. And a lot of parents are not aware of that. It may be different for different boroughs, but there's a lot of parents that are waiting and relying on the Senko who will often jump up in a meeting and say they're not an expert in this or that. Even though they're all academics and they've all got a university degree, but they are inept at dealing with your child that has special educational needs, and that's their special training.
Thank you, Nat. Next is Nikiru. You can, yeah. Did I just remute you? Unmute yourself. We can't hear you, you need to unmute.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm just joining for the first time today, and I've been listening, which is amazing. This is what I really want. If I don't know how to start, I just want to talk about what is happening. It's about my son, what they are really doing to my son. I just need an advice. I don't know what to do. My son is ADHD, but the school has not, they're supposed to give him a support. But instead of that, they give him punishment, put him in seclusion, the situation that he cannot handle by himself. So I've tried so much to get a help for him. I work with NHS anyway. So now I got a social service that is there to help, but the school refused to add him when they sent me email. Like they said they're taking my son to, what's it called?
Pupil referral unit, alternative provision.
Sorry.
They're sending him to a pupil referral unit or an alternative provision?
Yeah, they said they're going to send him after the meeting, that he will go to that's a place. They said that the children that they cannot handle. But I now sent an email that my son is not a child that you cannot handle, but all he needs is support, because he has ADHD. That is a situation that he cannot handle by himself. So I am following them. Roten, maybe you know him, Roston. He's the one that gave me this link. So he has been there with me with this case. He said that he's not going to go to that place, that I should join this and listen to what is happening to other people. I just need a help. This child is a condition that he cannot. Oh yeah, I asked them for referral. They didn't listen to me, so I went to my GP. Then all the detention punishment they're giving to my son, I sent everything as email to my GP, and my GP got angry, said that is bad, and sent email to St. Paul's Academy. Then they
See, do you know what the
sent
thing is? Because we wouldn't be able to deal with the whole thing this evening, because you know, like there's a lot more than what you'd be able to explain to us tonight. We would need to see his school file. We would need to see if he's got an educational healthcare plan and what that looks like, his diagnosis, what he's supposed to get, the support that's supposed to be put in place, if he's got one-to-one support, where they want to send him, why they want to send him there, how long he's been diagnosed. You know, there's a lot that needs to be uncovered with regards to whatever the school claim they're doing or are not doing. So then with that, then you can build a case and say, well, actually, an educational healthcare plan is very, very clear. It's very clear on what it says and the recommendations by a psychologist. Sending him somewhere if they're not giving him the support. You have several things that you could do. And like I said, it's difficult to give, you know, a one answer right now. And that is simply because of the fact that there's many layers to these sorts of things. So it would be a case of you'd have to contact us outside of this meeting, and then we'll be able to go through everything with you and ask the right questions, and then maybe even hold a meeting with the school and find out what they're doing from what they're not doing. You need the file. It's the same thing I said, you need that file, because that file will have all the information that they claim they're doing, all his detentions, everything will be in there. And then from there, you'll know how to also move forward as well. Also,
just a general reminder, people, I did say that if you can remember, this is Chatham House rules. That means we're discussing as a group, and what we discuss here stays in the group, number one. And number two, please, you know, we're not going to be disseminating anybody's data or discussing anybody that asks a question.
Yeah, it's a lot to try and yeah, it's a lot. These things, like, people think that they can just ask, oh, my child's got autism and the school aren't doing what they're supposed to do. It's so much more than just saying, oh, well, they should do this, without the facts. We can only work on facts and evidence. So with anybody that, whether you're in the chat or just, you know, asking questions, we need to see everything. And it can take us anywhere from 1 to 3 days to read through everything and cross-reference with the SENS Code of Practice, cross-reference with the school's policies. And not to say that the school's policies are written in stone. A lot of the school's policies, you can go to 10 school websites and all the policies are exactly the same. So it is literally that we would have to deal with the evidence and facts and say, well, actually, they failed here, they failed there, they failed there, they failed there, or they have done this. What have you done as a parent? They are doing this, but what are you doing to support? You know, your son also has a responsibility. There's a lot to it than, you know, what we'll be able to cover in this meeting. And that's not just to you, Nikaru. This is to anybody that is there in the chat and is concerned. And I can see there are a lot of you that are concerned with regards to how your child or children are being treated in the school system. It's diabolical. It is mostly racist. They use social services as a weapon. They bank on the fact that parents don't know or understand the law. And you know what the funniest part is? Most teachers don't know or understand the law. And when you come and you challenge them on the law, they kind of like, I was in a meeting once and I goes, well, same thing you said earlier, Jennifer, about cultural appropriation. And then when they were summing up the hearing, all of a sudden they decided that they used cultural appropriation. Funny enough, before we go, and Natalie, I see you, before we go as well, as I think about that case, check this out. And this was when the Labour Party were in, not that any party is any better than each other, but they're slightly better. The law came in that once an exclusion is overturned by the independent review panel, so when your child is excluded, you go to the governors first, usually the governors side with the school because they are a critical friend. Then you go to independent review. Now, the case is when they go to independent review and the independent review panel say that the child should be reinstated back at the school, Boris Dutty Johnson changed the law around that. That could still mean that your child does not go back into that school. What can happen is that your child, the independent review panel can direct your child back to the school, and then the governors can then hold another meeting. It doesn't have to be the same governors. They can get another set of governors to hold another meeting to analyze the case and see if they want to reinstate that child. Those governors can overturn the decision by those that are supposed to be higher, the independent review panel, and refuse to reinstate your child back into school. And that is the law. Many of you say to me, oh, well, the governors are the head teacher's wife. That's lawful. You can have the head teacher, the chair of governors could be his daughter, the vice chair could be his wife, all of these things, and it is not against the law. It's not criminal, so it's lawful and unlawful. So just so you understand how complex and what a minefield education, particularly, and even social services, these two areas of law tend to nowadays are going hand in hand more and more and more and more. The more schools are using social services as a weapon against parents, is the more that even as an organization as the Black Child Agenda, we're coming into contact with a lot more social services cases, and a lot of it is made up nonsense. Natalie, I see you have your hand up. What is the time? I have to keep an eye on the time, because we have been on, and you know, we have to give props to our speakers, Jennifer Obaseki and Maria Rooney. Natalie, let me find you. You can unmute your mic to answer your question. Please keep it as a question rather than a statement would be really appreciated. Thank you.
Just a question really. I just wanted to establish, if your child is hurt at school, and it's been, you know, it's been an issue, ongoing issue with another child, and then your child is really hurt at school, where to the point where they've had to go and seek medical attention at the GP, who then sent them to A&E. But what I'm saying is, whose responsibility is that? And also, when they were meting out the punishment for the child that hurt my child was exactly the same as what my child got, exactly the same punishment for responding back in regards to like self-defense.
So is this a case of bullying? Your child's being bullied at school?
Yeah, he's been bullied by this boy from year 5. I've put it in writing. I've had constant conversations. He's now in year 7. In year 5 to 6, my son never fought back. He's now got a bit more confident, and this guy hit him in his throat. The ENT guy said could not believe the damage. His larynx, the muscles around his larynx are swollen, but because he fought back, the school is saying that it was violent. They were both violent, and therefore both needed to have the same sanction.
You see, this is very common with the bullying things. You know how I deal with the bullying? Because my oldest son was bullied at school because he looked like a girl. He was very pretty and a good-looking young man at that. And I did what you did. Go and talk to the school. Go and tell the teacher. They have an anti-bullying policy. As far as I'm concerned, their anti-bullying policies are not worth the paper they're written on, not one of them, because the schools don't follow it. And what I told my son was, if someone puts their hands on you, because I got sick of it, lick it down. And I know this is not the right thing to do, so
No,
they
but that-
say,
No,
lick
Cheryl,
it down, because at
I
the end
agree
of the
with
day, let me
you.
tell you something.
Yeah, I
I
agree
don't
with you.
send, like, being a black child is hard enough. Being a black parent is hard enough in the belly of the damn beast. It's tough. So how dare these people expect you to send your child into school every day and get punched in the face and nothing happens? And as soon as he defends himself, now he's the aggressor. Two things.
That's
Number
right.
one, you complain. You have to go to the school, and I said it from the beginning, in writing. You write an email complaint about the fact that this has happened. They probably won't do anything about it. I already know what you're going to say. You also write to the safeguarding department in the local authority, because this is a safeguarding concern.
Okay. I haven't done that.
So you write to safeguarding because your child is not being safeguarded. So at the end of the day, your child is no beating stick, but I'm sorry, lick it down, and then let them call you later, okay? Make sure you document everything. And then you go through the complaints procedure. The unfortunate thing on the education side is you have to go through the procedure. That is number one, you make a complaint to the school. Number two, you go to the governors, and you're not going to necessarily meet all the governors. It might be one, it might be two, it may be all three if they feel like turning up for the day. Number three, if you're not happy with the governors, then you go to the next tier one tribunal, tier two tribunal, and then you can actually go to and take, if it's individual teachers or the whole school, to court. You can go to the small claims court and file an application against them because they're failing to safeguard your child. But at the end of the day, and the bottom line is, from a legal perspective, that's what you need to do. From a personal perspective, I never sent my child to school to be bullied. I'm sorry. And if anyone puts their hand on my child, and I will let the teachers know, if anyone puts their hand on my child has my authority to hit them back. And if you have a problem with that, let me know, or do something about, or fulfill your policy with regards to safeguarding and bullying. Make sure you download the policies as well. All the policies are on the school's website. You don't need to ask the school for it. You go on their website and you download every single one of them, because that's what they're supposed to be following. Bullying is a very serious issue. Children are trying to commit suicide, children are self-harming, children are trying to take tablets and all kinds of madness. Children are going out and being over-sexualized because of the bullying that they're facing in schools, whether it be boys or girls, because I know of some young boys that are out there being sexualized in parks and all kinds of places, and girls giving head to grown men, all kinds. Why? Because they're being bullied in school, and for teachers who are predominantly white, overlook your black child who is suffering because they don't give a damn. So at the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, and I told all three of my boys the same thing, they're all grown up now, if you go and tell the teacher and no one ain't doing nothing and nobody's listening and you're not being heard, I'm sorry, then you're getting a fist straight in your mouth. Or we're fighting because we can't grow a generation of wimps. We can't grow like how I see them in America. Everyone's carrying over. No. We can't be doing that, because all that's going to happen is your child ends up with the mental health problem. Your child ends up with the confidence problem. No.
That's exactly what I said to the head of.
Cheryl, can I just say, you can, if it's really got that bad and the school's not listening, you can also report it to the police and then have a crime reference number for the assault on your child. I really do advocate that when it becomes physical, there's fisticuffs and there's scrapes and then there's assault. And if the school's not protecting your child from harm, and they've been warned that this harm is becoming worse, and not only the physical harm, but the mental harm, but if there's physical harm and it's assault, then the police will actually contact the school and say, actually, there's been a report made. And the school have to respond
you
to
can
that.
also take a child out. You can remove your child from school. You can write to them and tell them that you're removing your child from school and the safeguarding team, and you're not sending your child back until it's sorted, or you apply to a different school. Your child doesn't have to go to that school. You apply for another school if it's that bad. So you've got several options. Me, I'm like, everybody want kung fu fighting? No, I sent my child to martial arts, kick it down. So that, like, we were supposed to finish 15 minutes ago. And we have had a very well fulfilled session. Did you guys learn something different today? Did you guys I know we couldn't answer everybody. I know we couldn't deal with everything online today because it wasn't the time, and it's definitely not the place for it. But if you do need direct help, support, and assistance, you can contact Jennifer. Jennifer Obaseki at obasekisolicitors.co.uk. Is that right, Jennifer? Put it in the chat so parents can see. And you can also contact Maria Rooney. Put that in the chat as well, Maria. You guys know how to find me, Sharafin. It's the Black Child Agenda. We're on Google. And, you know, we can do what we can. We're going to have another one of these next week, Wednesday. Hopefully it will work on Wednesday. We're going to do another one next Wednesday, and next Wednesday, or should we keep it to Sunday? But I like going to the beach on Sunday. Next week, Wednesday, we're going to be dealing with crime, grooming, gangs, isolation, which I wanted to cover today, but on so crime, grooming, gangs, and things around that, and the links back again. I know it's going to be crossover with education and children and families. I think the following week we're going to be dealing with, I can't remember, I think it's mental health, not only with regards to children, but also adults, because a lot of us are suffering in silence and we're not sure where to get the help, or when we do get the help, it's coming at a face of blonde hair and blue eyes who have no understanding, don't care to understand, don't want to understand, and don't really give a damn. So we need to start talking about our mental health as parents. Because like we said earlier, as Maria said, and we've said as well, this is stressful. It's very stressful. Then we had COVID. Then we've had all of these things. Who's looking after your mental health? Who's making sure you're okay? Who's checking in on you to make sure that you are doing what needs to be done and getting up and making sure that everything's happening? So we're going to be dealing with that. So next week is crime. Following week is mental health. After that, I'm not sure. So thank you, everybody. Jennifer and Maria, thank you. Kick down specialist.
Is the link the same, Cheryl?
Say what?
Is the link the same for next week?
Yeah, because that's my basic link. So yeah, the link will be the same, but it will be shared. Jennifer, is there any last things that you want to say
Please,
before you go? And Maria?
What time next week, please?
6:30.
Can I just suggest, this is what I say to parents. So parents, in your city, if there's no support groups in your city, please come together and set up a support group. Yeah, it is very, I travel all over England. I go to every single city. I say, what is there in your city to support you? If there's nothing there to support parents, then come together and set something up. You need the emotional support, especially because it's very, very stressful, very, very traumatic. You need to be all there together, supporting each other, sharing information and emotionally supporting each other. Is very, very difficult for parents nowadays.
Yeah, I second that. As I said, once you get outside London, it can be very difficult for you to find people who are fully culturally aware. So setting yourselves up is one thing. The other thing is, don't stay silent. Do try to document things, make notes. It's always important to be able to refer back to notes, and especially what I said about making recordings. You might not have English as your first language. You might need to have somebody go over what has been said to you. You might need to have a recording so you have an accurate record of what's been said. And we're not talking about covert recordings. We're talking about, my way of understanding is documenting what has been said in this manner. Also taking people along with you to important meetings, because it can be quite emotionally draining. And the other thing is always to try and remain composed, because the last thing you want is someone to use any excuse. Always try to remain composed. Don't sign things under pressure or under threat. Always, it's your right to have legal advice on any situation. Thank you.
Can I also say one more thing? So a lot of questions I get asked is, oh, a social worker wants to come and visit me. Do I have to let them in? Right, let me tell you something now. If a social worker wants to come and see you, right, you have to engage with them and you have to cooperate them, and you can't be defensive and obstructive, because they will make your life hell. So if a social worker says jump, you say how high, because social services have got the same powers as the police. If they want to take your child, they will take your child. If they want to go to your child's school and take your child, they will take your child. They have got a lot of power. So when parents say to me, oh, do I have to let them in? Do I have to talk to them? Oh, yes, you do, because they've got the same power as the police. These people are very powerful. They're very corrupt. If you don't let them in, they'll go to your school and they'll talk to your kid at school, and you won't have no say in it whatsoever. So I say to parents, always cooperate, even if it kills you. Always engage, even if it kills you. I'm a social worker and I hate social workers, right? But just be nice and smile and say yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full. So you need to get them on side. You need to get them on board. Do not make them an enemy, because they will make your life hell.
And then the last thing I'll say for parents, as we said, and we're going to keep reiterating, GDPR requests for everything. Whether it's your social services file, whether it's your school file, whether it's a police file, you can request everything. Get it in writing. When you're communicating with anybody, whether it's social worker, social services, the school, do it in writing, do it via email. So that way you keep a log. It is like a minefield, it is like a battlefield. But unfortunately, if you're sending your children into their schools, then you're going to have to make sure you're on top of whatever the possibility. Recording in meetings, definitely. I'm a definite 100% advocate for that. We record everything because most of these things do record. And if you're not sure, just ask. You know, asking one question is quite different than, because I have some people say, oh, can I just ask a quick question? And they want to be on the phone for 45 minutes. I have other things to do. And if you want to be on the phone with us, you have to book an appointment, because everything is streamlined. So for me, I'm very anal about that, because at one point I would have 15 to 20 calls a day. And I would sit down and speak to each parent for half an hour, 45 minutes. And by the end of the night, I was absolutely drained, mentally and physically exhausted. Now, you book a time, you book an appointment, and no one can encroach on that time. And then that time is dedicated solely to you for that 40, 50 minutes that we're on the phone. And then you walk away happy, I walk away not exhausted. So that's how we do it. All right, we're going to log off now.
Thank you, everybody.
Please, can we